Soldier Sean. I made a chronal accelerator. I'm sure I can do this. To all agents of Overwatch. That's not right. To the former agents of Overwatch. This is Winston. Obviously. 30 years ago, the Omnics declared war.
Every time I hear this opening cinematic, I sit up a little straighter. The clip you're watching right now, it's the opening cinematic to the video game Overwatch. In it, Winston is floating through the history of our heroes, framed like mythic gods carved in light. The lore is delivered with sincerity, earnestness, a little drama, and completely irresistible. On paper, Overwatch is a simple 5v5, used to be 6v6, objective-based hero shooter. In it, there are 2 teams, 3 roles, simple jobs: push the payload, capture the point, do not C9. The rules are clean enough that anyone can follow them in 5 minutes or less. But to play it? Now that's something else entirely. When you are in the game, you're not just a player. You are the tank standing between your team and the storm. You are damage, threading precision through chaos. You are support, keeping the lights on while everything burns around you. The game hands you a role and asks you to trust 4 strangers with your digital life. That trust is fragile. When it holds, the match feels like choreography. When it breaks, it feels like gravity. Overwatch lives in emotional extremes. The breathless scramble of overtime, the sharp silence after a failed push, the roar in your headset when 5 ultimates land in perfect sequence. It's a game of inches and instinct. A game where milliseconds matter. A game where triumph feels communal and failure feels personal. And that feeling is not accidental. Over the past 2 weeks of recording my matches, I stopped seeing random wins and losses, and I started seeing patterns. Not just mechanical patterns, but psychological ones. Subtle pressures built into the design, invisible curtains shaping how I think, react, blame, and lead, sometimes spiral. This video is not a breakdown of frame data or patch notes. It's a field study. We are going to look back at 5 recurring forces that show up again and again in live matches. First, that electric state players call being in the zone. When the game narrows to a single glowing thread and everything clicks. Second, we're going to look at the opposite sensation, when a team fight feels overwhelming and the screen is louder than you thought. A third, that quiet surge of confidence that flows through you, that makes you think you can win any duel, right up until the respawn proves you can't. Fourth, the subtle way that the game structures and nudges you into identities and expectations before the match even begins. And finally, the momentum swing that makes one lost fight feels like the start of an avalanche. Individually, these moments feel random. Together, they form a system. Overwatch is not just a shooter, it's a pressure chamber for human behavior. And once you start looking at it that way, you can't unsee it.
Are you with me?
You know that feeling? The music kicks in, the comms blur into the background, your hands move before you tell them to. Crosshair placements feel magnetic, cooldowns line up like they were planned hours in advance. This is what players, athletes, even mathematicians call being in the zone. The famous psychologist, wow, I'm not even going to attempt that, describes this state flow as a form of optimal experience that occurs when the challenge of a task, perfectly matches the individual's skill level. When skill and difficulty are balanced, attention narrows, self-consciousness fades, and even time begins to distort. In a match of Overwatch, the flow might look like a perfectly timed headshot, or a duel that feels less like aiming and more like instinct. You're not thinking through each movement step by step. The decisions feel immediate and correct. The feedback is instant. A hit marker confirms your aim, a sound cue signals impact, the elimination test flashes at exactly the right moment. Overwatch is engineered to make this state possible. Its matchmaking system attempts to pair players of similar skills. Its hero abilities provide clear risks and reward. Its audio and visual feedback sharpens the loop between action and response. When all of that aligns, the game becomes immersive in a way that feels effortless. Flow is not luck, it's a psychological state produced when structure, skill, and challenge briefly lock into place. Now, while flow feels effortless, that balance is delicate. The same system that creates immersion can just as quickly overwhelm it. Flow is what happens when that system fits you perfectly. When it doesn't, you could just as easily get it. But, flow is fragile. Cognitive load theory suggests that working memory has a limited capacity. When task demands or exceeds that capacity, performance deteriorates. In a controlled duel, your brain can manage positionings, cooldowns, tracking, aim, and sound cues, but in a 5v5 team fight in Overwatch, that balance shatters. You're tracking an enemy in the sky, you hear something teleport behind you, your healer is calling for a peel, the kill feed is flashing, your health bar is critical, someone just triggered an ult, maybe 3 ults. Your working memory is not built for this many simultaneous inputs. It overstimulates, it drops information, it narrows attention in ways that feels random afterwards. That missed ultimate, that panic reload, that moment where you walked directly into a diva bomb, you definitely saw. It's not always incompetence, it's overload. When the brain redlines, performance does not decline smoothly. It collapses. Decisions become reactive instead of strategic. Tunnel vision requires awareness. You default to habit because there's no bandwidth left for analysis. The fog of war in Overwatch is not just chaos, it's cognitive saturation. And when the flow turns into overload, the same system that made you feel unstoppable just a minute ago now exposes every human limitation you have. When our brains overload, they do not stop deciding. Under pressure, we lean on instinct, and instinct, especially after a few wins, has a dangerous habit of telling us we're better than we are, which will often lead us to Can anyone relate? I know I can. 2 fights won, damage numbers climbing, the lobby feels smaller. You start thinking, I am the win condition. Blade online, no need to wait, no need to track cooldowns, just trigger your ultimate and end it. Research on biases shows that under uncertainty, people rely on mental shortcuts that often produce systemic errors in judgment. One of these errors is overconfidence, the tendency to overstimulate our own ability or control. In Overwatch, uncertainty is constant. You rarely have the perfect amount of information. You do not know every cooldown. You cannot see every angle, so your brain fills in the gaps. And when you're performing well, that shortcut sounds like confidence. I can win this. I can outplay this. They will never expect this. So you dash into 5 players, that ultimate that never comes down. The stun lands instantly. The elimination screen appears before your ultimate voice line even finishes. Overconfident bias is not arrogance in a vacuum. It's predictable distortion under pressure. After cognitive overload strips away careful analysis, we lean on instinct. When recent successes feed that instinct, it feels smaller than it actually is. The solo blade is not just a bad decision, it's a textbook example of how humans misjudge probability when emotions and momentum are in control. Individual bias operates inside the structured environments. To understand players' behavior, we have to examine how the game organizes decision-making itself. Before the match even begins, the system has already shaped our decisions. Choice architecture refers to the way environments structure decisions and nudge behavior. The layout of options, the framing of roles, even the order in which choices appear all subtly guide behavior without removing freedom. In Overwatch, that architecture starts at role queue. 3 lanes: tank, damage, support. You click one, and instantly a social contract forms. The hero select screen reinforces it. Icons grouped by function, visual cues signaling team balance. In earlier iterations, warnings about missing roles flashed like dashboard lights. These are not neutral design decisions, they are nudges. Tanks begin to feel like responsibility, your anchor space. If the line breaks, it feels personal. Support becomes obligation. You are the lifeline, the unseen infrastructure. Damage carries visibility. Eliminations highlight statistics, glory. The interface quietly assigns identities before the first shot is fired. You're not just selecting a hero, you're stepping into structured expectations, engineered to keep the team machine functioning. And once identity is attached to a role, switching feels less like strategy and more like betrayal. Overwatch does not simply present choices. It arranges them in a way that shapes behavior, distributes pressure, and defines how players interrupt both success and blame. The invisible hand of the system is already on the controller. And once those conditions are made, the system responds, not passively. The outcome of one decision becomes the condition for the next. Once we understand that, we can start to see our fifth and final concept. In Overwatch, the feedback loop often looks like a snowball. One fight is won, your team gains ultimates, and suddenly the next engagement is easier. That momentum feels itself positive feedback. Every advantage compounds. Every coordinated push is unstoppable. System theory describes feedback loops as processes where outputs feed back into the system, amplifying future outcomes. In Overwatch, the loop is visible. Win a fight, gain an ult, advantage, win the next fight. Over and over and over this goes. Conversely, loss feeds loss. Staggered respawns, missing ultimates, depleted team resources, these make the next team fight even harder. Every mistake echoes throughout the match, creating this psychological spiral. Feedback loops don't just amplify the gameplay. They amplify the very human experience we've already discussed. Flow state increases confidence, overconfidence bias makes riskier players feel justifiable, and cognitive overload leaves players vulnerable to errors. The system doesn't just respond to skill, It interacts with our psychology, magnifying strengths, weaknesses, and emotions in real time. A single lost fight in the first 30 seconds can tilt the team, creating a momentum deficit that is as much mental as mechanical. The team that falls behind experiences frustration, panic, and self-blame, while the leading team rides a wave of reinforcements. Overwatch is not neutral. It's a psychological amplifier. It takes the same decisions, the same skills, the same impulses, and feeds them back louder, faster, and more consequently. By understanding these loops, we see how the game structures shapes, not just outcomes, but players' behavior, team dynamics, and emotional roller coasters. That makes everything feel much more alive.